Excited to be here for our 1 o'clock afternoon session on Wednesday. We're at PDMI West. We're counting it down. We're only 2 sessions away and a party away from wrapping this thing up. We appreciate all the support of everyone who's been here all week. Badge holders, sponsors, members, everyone who's taken part, we really appreciate you. I'm Thomas Haire, the Chief Content Officer of the PDMI. We have to specifically thank our education sponsor, Blue Water. They've had a rough week. The Blue Water team, they're in Clearwater, Florida, if you don't know. And about half their team is here that was planned to be here. The other half was helping move out all of their equipment to higher and drier ground. So we hope the best for them over the next 24 to 48 hours. But Blue Water does have a message to share with you, and we're going to play it now.
At Tommy John, a lot goes into our underwear before you do.
But now I've found my bubbly side with SodaStream.
Philips air fryer is the original and the very best.
So thank you to Blue Water. You can visit their team at table 3 in the meeting hall up until 5 o'clock today, so please swing by. That said, I'm excited to have you here for our session today, which is entitled Buy-Side Banter, Performance Agencies Speak Out. We have a couple of wonderful panelists with us today. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the themes that you've already heard a lot about at the show, the perspectives of performance brands, of media outlets and publishers, ad tech providers. You've heard a lot of that, a lot of information from them. Now it's time to hear a little bit more directly from the agencies about what's next in performance marketing. So that said, I'm going to have each of my panelists introduce themselves. Welcome in, Alesha.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alesha Romatier. I lead account and strategy at GainShare Performance Marketing. We're a full-service agency based in Toronto and Chicago, and we're excited to be here today.
And Vicky Chang.
Hi everyone, my name is Vicky. I am the VP of Media and Operations at an ad tech platform called Tatari. We specialize in direct consumer clients, and we have a automated platform where clients can see attribution and media buying.
Welcome into both of you. Thanks for being here. I'm just to get started. We have about a dozen questions we're going to tackle, and we're going to get rolling with them now. I'm going to go with you first on the first question, Vicky. Blurring lines in the media buying and selling between brand marketers and performance marketers adds a level of confusion for measurement companies, data companies, and agencies to navigate. From your perspective, what's the biggest challenge that your business faces from this kind of marketplace?
I think our biggest challenge, especially recently, is just increased fragmentation in the marketplace. There's a lot of streaming providers coming into the ad space, right? So you see Amazon coming in, Netflix, YouTube TV. So for us, that's kind of the biggest challenge that we see, mainly because they are also walled gardens. So they don't share as much data as some of the players that exist today, like a Peacock, Hulu, Disney. And so I think the fragmentation creates a pretty big challenge from the measurement side of things. So, our platform, we really do measurement for clients, and we do attribution. So when there's kind of a section of a piece of data missing within the media landscape, it makes it challenging. So that's kind of what we're trying to navigate through. And as it gains share over time, as people increase their viewership on Amazon and Netflix, it's going to become more and more of a kind of a challenge, right, for advertisers to navigate through and to figure out, should I be spending my money? Should I be spending more money, on Amazon and Netflix, or how much of it should I be doing compared to what I might be spending on, Peacock or even HGTV? Any of the kind of networks out there. So yeah, that's kind of the biggest thing we see.
Makes sense. Alesha, what about you?
Yeah, I think maybe from a slightly different perspective, the challenge that we see with our client agencies and our partners is really helping them not to shoot themselves in the foot, right? Because everything is so fragmented, and you've got finance departments who are making the decisions about in many cases, what makes sense to spend from a marketing mix perspective, we really rely on tools like Tatari and other attribution to help everyone understand that the above the line, right, those are different metrics. You really need to be focusing on growing your funnel at the same time as you're focusing on what is efficiently coming out at the bottom of the funnel in terms of sales. And so how do you map that together in a way that is coherent and arm your marketing partners to go to finance and say, you know, it might look like this really doesn't work, but in fact it does, right? And this is how.
Makes sense. There's been a lot of talk over the last few days about small to medium-sized brands that make up a big part of this performance marketing landscape. I'm going to go to you, Alesha, on this one first. How can small to medium-sized brands focused on using D2C methods test and understand this widening array of media options, linear, CTV, streaming?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two components to that. One component is measurement and making sure that everyone is aligned on what does success look like. What are you trying to do? Who are you trying to reach? Where are they? And how are you, at the end of the test, how are you able to go back and say, yes, this worked, or no, it didn't? And I think the other key component is for all of the different, to steal a Google word, platforms, surfaces that consumers are using to consume our advertising, how do you lean into the strengths of each to inform the other, right? So in the case of CTV, we have an enormous capacity to do testing and understand, what's working, what audiences are responding, all of that. You can, to some degree, lift and shift that over to informing how you approach your linear buying, and vice versa. In linear, less around the targeting, but really around the reach and understanding, like, okay, if this is really working in CTV, how do we make it work in linear? How do we skinny that down? Where are the places in linear where we feel like the net is too large,
Right.
and apply that over to CTV?
Vicky, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think one of the things that we found very successful is making sure that we're testing all the new publishers that are out there, testing all the new programs that are out there, and where they're actually appearing. So how is it being distributed, right? And what's the relationship between those? Like as an example, let's take Thursday Night Football on Amazon, right? As an example. So it's being distributed like on streaming, but it's kind of sold like a linear spot.
Yeah.
And the way that people are viewing it is similar to linear spot, at the same time. So I think when you're looking at those things, what is the relationship between that versus buying something on an NFL spot on Peacock or, on CBS? So finding the relationship between those is really important, and testing all those new distribution channels as they come up, because things change. It might be that way today, but they may change it later on, right? So it's finding the relationship between them and really getting to the audience for each brand, and that can appear in many different ways.
Great. We've heard a lot over the last couple of days about media measurement, currencies, different ways people are tackling attribution. If each of you could give me one word to describe the state of media measurement and currency, and then explain perhaps why. Alesha, maybe you go first.
Sure. Vicky used it in her opening line, I think.
Yeah.
Fragmented. It's super fragmented and makes it very challenging for marketers to understand what am I measuring and how is it impacting my bottom line.
Yeah, I would agree. It's fragmentation, and then it has to evolve from there.
For sure.
Because the way it currently is again very, very challenging. Even today, if you buy a spot on the NFL, for example, right, it runs on linear, but then there's also a streaming feed to a lot of it. Not all the time, but there's also a streaming component to it. So the measurement has to evolve with that, right? It's not the easiest thing because you have your linear methodology, you have a streaming methodology. But when you buy a spot, how do you actually figure out what drove what? And so I think that's going to evolve. And on a traditional basis too, you can kind of see how Paramount and CBS, they're kind of moving away from Nielsen and leaning into video amps. So there's just a lot of different ways to look at things. So just parsing all of that out and figuring out with this buy how it's being distributed, how do we want to measure it, and the methodology we want to apply to it, that will evolve.
Yeah.
Is there a hope for one standardized answer out there? Do you think there's any chance of that ever happening?
I think it'll be a challenge. I don't think it's going to be one answer. I think it will be, but I think there will be, movement towards more transparency and data sharing, because I think it's just necessary, and advertisers will push for it, and they will want it and require it. So I don't think there'll be one answer, but I do think people will evolve and see that why advertisers need it and why it's important for brands. And that in the end, it will get them to spend more and scale more, and find the right places for them. So I do think I have a positive outlook on that, I guess, but I do think it'll change.
I do too. I mean, I think we've seen in the last 12, 18 months, right, a coming together on the network side, right, where we used to have the streaming team over here and the linear team over here, and there the twain shall meet, and you're certainly seeing them coming to the table more as a unit, right, and flexibility in terms of, negotiations of where those dollars get spent. I think it's just a matter of time before they also understand that they, and hopefully in a more consistent way, right, but they also have to bite off, okay, how are we going to cross-measure this in a way that makes it more palatable to the advertisers that are buying.
Right. I've definitely seen more willingness to figure it out and willingness to, just be flexible on things from a lot of the largest networks. They've been really, really good partners. And I think, the newcomers in ad tech, the Amazon, Netflix, YouTubes of the world will probably kind of see that, and I think they will share more data eventually.
Yeah. Well, the digitally native, they have the data, right? They're just trying to figure out what's proprietary and how can they open it up while also keeping it in, I guess.
And a data compliant.
Yes, that too, yes.
Yeah. Alesha, this one I'm going to go to you first on. What technology is driving your understanding of where your clients, consumers, are receiving and, more importantly, responding to the messaging?
Yeah, so in terms of the planning component, right, we're using all of the tools that we're all familiar with, right? Nielsen tools, the digital tools to really track where are the eyeballs at the audience level, and how do you build your mix against that. In terms of the measurement, it's a mixed bag, right? Because of all the fragmentation. We're using an attribution partner, which is predominantly deterministic and matching at the IP level, right? Still, I think, panel-based, but IP to IP, and that has been really transformational, honestly, in how we're looking at our particularly direct response campaigns. But what I'm the most excited about is folks that are using ACR technology and thinking about understanding, at the core, they're trying to sell audiences of underexposed, overexposed, all of that. But with that technology comes a view into what is truly incremental from a linear to CTV comparison point, which for my clients is big, right? Incrementality is the word of the day, and really understanding, okay, frequency is a thing, right? But I'm trying to grow. My upper funnel tactics are about growing the size of the funnel, and so where am I truly getting growth versus where am I just doubling down or perhaps over-serving? And so those technologies to me are really cool because they offer a view that we haven't had before.
Yeah. Vicky, you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we've always used a lot of smart TV data to do a lot of the different tests and to prove out, the incremental audience. So I think that will continue. We've kind of always had that. I think it's just ways to set up different tests and kind of prove things throughout. So it's not just one methodology. We kind of have one central one that's maybe more immediate, and then we do a lot of supplemental tests and kind of supplemental data points to show that, to kind of prove out our theories over and over again. And a lot of that is leveraging smart TV data like across the whole landscape.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I think we've touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to toss it out there. The expanding universe of media measurement and attribution options, what is that bringing to the table that maybe D2C marketers have not seen before?
I would say the same thing I just said in terms of incrementality there. beyond that, I don't think anybody's really changed the game just yet to next level.
Yeah, I think for us, because we do the measurement, we've been doing it for a little while, but it allows people to have, like, our feedback loop can be 24 hours, right? And so people can have that data and inform in a shorter time frame. So for us, it's changed in the fact that, you know, we're not necessarily buying things a year in advance or 3 quarters out or 2 quarters out. It's shortened our time frame window to kind of purchase and make decisions, you know, see if something's working, and then be able to quickly double down, you know. So, for example, the, you know, news and election coverage that's happening, you know, we're able to prove out a few weeks before, is the news audience, you know, kind of little test, right? That isn't a big investment, but is the news audience right for this brand at this time? And we're able to do, you know, little tests for 3 weeks or, you know, a few weeks out at much smaller investments to inform them, you know, in a week or two, should I go big on the presidential debate? Should I be buying, you know, the VP debate? And so they're able to just react quicker with data-backed decision-making.
Speaking, I mean, since you brought up election and kind of buying around it and figuring out how that might work, obviously this is the biggest election media spend we've ever seen across all media. How is that affecting your client? Obviously we heard a little bit from Vicky, but how is that affecting your client base? Is it harder this time than ever, or are there more opportunities out there?
It's a mixed bag, really. I mean, it depends a lot on the advertiser themselves, and also the fact that this is an unprecedented year, but also the last election was during COVID, so also unprecedented, and there's not a lot of comparison points. I think for us, because the majority of our linear spend, at least, is done nationally, we haven't seen big impacts to rates. We have seen really interesting advertiser to advertiser response rate changes, right? Some advertisers really don't want to be in the elections, but they're airing in news normally. And so when we've had assassination attempts or other sorts of unexpected things happening in our political landscape, we've been able to look at that as kind of a bellwether. And it has been surprisingly good, honestly, in terms of the response rates that we're seeing, and the viewership obviously is up quite a lot. So then there's the question of, okay, well, we have data that shows us that this might not be a bad place for you to be, but then you have advertisers who have brand concerns or, you know, really want to stay away from the political landscape. So it's really case by case trying to measure what do we think is truly the right thing. If you're looking at it through a performance lens, they can make their determination on, you know, brand health, but what do we think is the right thing for each individual advertisers, and then sort of putting that forth with a business case.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So we look at, you know, the entire scope of performance campaigns. We've been doing this for the last 2 days on the stage, talking about what's working, what's not, which media outlets are working, which media outlets are still test zones. I want to ask each of you, and I'm going to start with you, Vicky. First, which media outlet is working most effectively for you today and why? And then which one is providing your biggest pain point?
It's a little bit hard to answer because we have a very broad range of clients.
Right.
So not to be cliche, but it depends on the client. But we've actually seen both linear and streaming, because I know there's a lot of questions. Oftentimes people will ask us, should we be in 100% streaming? Should we lean more linear? And really it just comes, it's not one answer, right? It really depends on the client, but we're able to tell them, it's not about you need to be 70% linear and 30% streaming, and we'll do whatever, you know, is required for that media buy to hit that. It's really a moving target, right? And so we'll see if it makes sense to buy something on linear, or if it makes sense to buy something on streaming. But I would say both are working really well right now. It just kind of depends on what your product is, what your category is. You know, what are you more aiming for performance, or are you aiming for reach, or are you doing both? What part of the TV journey are you in? But I think for this year, there has been a lot of you know, news coverage that has worked really well. So I kind of talked about that, but that has been a big opportunity. just from a news coverage standpoint, but also when the broadcast spots air, that has been a really big reach driver for a lot of our clients. So that's worked really well, as well as sports. So, sports, live sports, also kind of niche sports has also worked really well. And also live feeds, right? Anything that is just live content that people can find. We found that to work really well. But yeah, we usually, like I said, it's a discovery process, right? You find out if news works or if sports works for you. But for the most part, those have been pretty good avenues for us. And also kind of bigger sponsorships, tent poles. But again, it kind of has to be the right audience for you. But we found success in, things like the Emmys, things like Golden Bachelorette, things like that. So it just depends. But yeah. I think if you're aiming for reach and kind of larger plays, then those have been really good areas for us.
Yeah, I would mirror that, and I would just layer on, for us, it's a lot about where is the audience. I think it's convenient for all of us and for advertisers to sort of say, oh, we have our linear TV audience over here, and we have our connected streaming audience over here, and like, they're totally different. They're not. They're the same people, right? So it's really about understanding who is the audience that your client is trying, or that your advertiser is trying to reach, and also who is the client who's responding to them, because that's not always the same, and then finding those people in the right place. And it can be, to your point, Vicky, about where are they in their journey, right? If it's performance-based and you're really looking at like a last click model or a call model in the old DR way, like that's one particular place, and that's never going to work you're never going to get a reach driving strategy to work in those parameters. But if you're constructing a thoughtful approach against who the audience is and where they are and what the goals are, then everything can work.
Makes sense. I think it's interesting to think about the next generation and kids who are, I have two small kids at home, but you think about kids who are like even turning 18 now, they live in a world that they don't linear, and CTV is not a thing. It's just this is what I watch, and I watch it on my phone, I watch it here, I watch it there. So it is really the same audience. It's just where can we find them, right? And another thing about Vicky's point, we had a session yesterday talking about the power of women's sports as a programming option. Would you guys like to say anything about that? Are you guys seeing success with buys in those areas?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, the viewership has grown, and I think people are watching it, and brands are getting really behind it. So we did a few sponsorships in like WNBA, and that has really performed well too. I think it's the sponsorships in addition to the spots, but kind of pulling everything through and having, sponsorship elements to it, as well as, spots in the game and just being kind of surrounded by it. For if you're kind of aiming more for reach and brand plays, that's worked really well.
Yeah, well, and the engagement is there. I think it's for live events and live sports in particular, you have a much higher amount of engagement because it's not. I feel like the news, people will turn that on and just have it on in the background. But if you're turning on a game, you're probably watching the game.
Right.
And I think with women's sports, that's even more so the case because it's really got a huge following. Caitlin Clark and everything that she's been doing has just activated this whole audience of younger viewers, female viewers, and sports fans who haven't necessarily looked there before. So there's a lot of potential.
Yep, that's great. Alesha, I'm going to start with you on this one. We're heading into 2025. Two key things that you think brands and advertisers must consider when they think about this evolution of television, video, media, the landscape.
Who are you trying to reach, and what are you trying to do? It's pretty, it's back to where I started, right? Don't shoot yourself in the foot. You've got to grow your funnel, and you have to do it efficiently. So really crystallize what are your goals, and who are you reaching, and where are they?
Vicky, thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it's just about really leaning on measurement in a complex marketplace and navigating that. But leaning on data and what you know, right? Because there's going to be a lot of unknowns, like I said, with distribution, how people are going to choose to sell it, who's going to watch it. So I think that can get very confusing and cloudy, but really focus on what you know, which is who are your customers, where do you find them, and do that through measurement, right? And so, yeah, that's kind of what I would recommend, because it's difficult sometimes to break through the noise and everything that's going on, but really lean on what you know is driving sales and driving customers.
Great. In the prep for this question, we kind of laughed because questions like this used to say, what will it be in 3 to 5 years? And now it's, I think actually my initial draft had 12 to 18 months, and we decided that was too far out. Vicky, I'll go to you. You know, what's linear TV's role today in the marketplace, and what will it be, say, when we get to Miami in 6 months, or we come back here to San Diego in a year? What do you think linear TV is going to look like?
I think, so linear TV, there's still a lot of reach, right, driven by linear TV, and like we said, it kind of informs a lot of streaming and a lot of kind of where your audience is. So I think it's still going to play a very important role. A lot of viewers on stream are still being driven by pay TV and broadcast, right? So it's still being driven by what we might consider linear. Very little of viewing is actually being driven only by streaming publishers, right? So I think it's still going to have a very important role. It's just about how do you navigate it and talk between the two, and what's the relationship there. But I don't see that going away. I think if you really want to reach the TV universe, the full TV universe, it's still going to involve, linear. I think it's just figuring out what's the relationship between them and what does it mean for your brand. But I see it being, very much a part of people's media mix still, probably next 6 months, yes. I don't know about, 24 months from now, but I think it's still going to play a very important role.
Yeah, I think it's going to evolve. I don't imagine there will be an enormous shift in 6, even 12 months. But it will be back to the engagement, right? It will be more and more focused around what's happening live from a news or a sports perspective. And I think linear TV will continue to offer broad, efficient mass reach, right? It's not, you have a really highly defined tool in targeting in a digital capacity. So that's not going to ever be available in linear, but linear still does give you that huge blanket, and the eyeballs are there. So yes, 24 months from now, 5 years from now, I think we can all accept that, right? Viewership is going to change. Our children, they might not know what they're watching, but they're probably not watching that much linear TV. And the industry is going to have to keep pace with that. But I don't see in the next 12 months that there's going to be a massive, massive shift beyond what we've already seen.
Right. I mean, to your point earlier about how the outlets, the network groups are now consolidating or integrating their linear and streaming sales teams. How important is that to you guys from the buying perspective to have that opportunity to talk to them and know that this is your this is the array of options we have? Because I know it's been years, we're finally seeing it, but it's been years where you've had one group, everything was split, another group, everything was together. It seems like it's all coming together. It's got to be hugely important for each of you.
Yeah, it's critical, it's vital. I think it has to work that way going forward, because so our teams are combined. So there's not like a linear team and a digital team. It's combined because you have to look at it together, right? And so our partners have been great. A lot of the networks, that's kind of how they work with us and communicate with us, but it's vital, right? You have to be interoperable between linear and streaming, so you can't really separate it. And they play different roles, right, in the funnel, so it has to be together. Yeah.
And flexibility. I mean, my advertisers are increasingly unwilling to accept, in an upfront situation, for instance, they're happy to commit to a certain amount of dollars. They are less happy to commit to X amount of dollars on linear and Y amount of dollars on streaming. They really want the flexibility based on whatever campaign they're trying to generate and the results that they're looking for. And in anticipation of changing consumer behavior, they're increasingly insisting on that. And thankfully, the networks have been more and more willing to accommodate. As long as there's the appropriate amount of dialogue and conversation around it when the time comes to make a shift.
Makes sense. Consumers, the viewers out there, the research is continuing to show that consumers kind of want to go back to a variation on the old cable system. You know, they're seeing how much they're spending on their streaming options. They're seeing all of these different things, and they're realizing, wow, I'm not saving a lot of money. I might be spending more money. Is there a consolidation coming in the streaming market, and is there a possibility of like more of a easy to use, easy to pay model coming in the future? Vicky, thoughts?
I would think so. I think it's just from a viewer standpoint, it's so complicated. You know, sometimes you want to watch a game and you have no idea where to go. And I'm in the industry, right? So if you're a consumer out there, I think it's really, really complicated. You almost feel like you need a matrix to understand where to catch, you know, the program. So I think from that standpoint, it has to change, and it will change. And nobody wants to log on to have seven different streaming platforms, and it's expensive. So I do think that it'll consolidate. I think you see that already with YouTube TV, right? A lot of people kind of going there. You see that with Fubo. So it's happening, right? And then I think you see responses from, you know, Disney kind of bundling Disney Plus, ESPN, right? And so I think it is going to happen, right? It's just kind of the market speaking, and I think that will happen.
Yeah, I think it has to happen. And hopefully with it will come less fragmentation in terms of measurement and all of those things. But the one thing that I think has allowed it to stay as fragmented is all of the compelling content that's being created. So that piece is going to continue to be a driver for people to make exceptions because they want to watch a particular show or this show or that show. But I don't think there's a long-term tolerance for 15 different apps plus, you know, that you're paying for, and that you have to navigate to figure out where the show you want to watch is.
Right.
Well, I think that also has been pretty held up by sports.
Yeah.
And so I think also when the sports rights start to change and things change hands, that could also impact that, right? So
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the biggest holdout forever, obviously, for two tentpoles for linear sports and news, right? And it seems like the sports one is just starting to crumble because there's just so much activity now with sports going into different zones like that.
Right, it's going to change hands real quick, right? In 2025, 2026, with the NBA, as we know, and WWE and different properties, but it's going to disrupt the marketplace.
Yeah, makes sense. We're down to a couple more questions, a couple of big picture questions. Alesha, I'll go to you on this one first. If you could design the ultimate performance media outlet to serve your clients' needs, what would your 3 must-haves be?
Content, really, really compelling content that spans the universe of audiences. The flexibility in targeting to be able to get pretty narrow in terms of who you want to talk to and also get real broad. And measurement, right? Those are the 3 things that really matter here. So those are mine.
Probably overlaps a little bit, but I would say transparency, measurement, and automation, right? Ease of transaction.
Yeah.
That's what we face every day with our clients. They need to know where their media is running. They need to know how it's doing for their brand. And then it cannot be a long, drawn-out process that takes forever. So then comes the automation and the ease of transacting.
Yeah. I would say selfishly, operationally too, just a single portal for how you're getting all of your assets in and how everything is coming out rather than having to deal with all the different.
I mean, listen to what you guys have said here. I mean, is transparency really the biggest issue out there?
I think in the sense of with streaming, there's not a lot of transparency. And as that becomes more of the market share, right, it gets market share, I do think that is something that advertisers look for, right? There's not enough transparency, like I said, with the data from a measurement perspective, but also what programs is it running in? Who is the audience? It's kind of left for us to figure out, which we do, but it's not easy.
Makes sense. All right. this is your chance to leave everybody with one key thing. If you could leave your clients, media outlet partners, and ad tech vendors with one key message while on stage about how they can best serve your business, what would it be?
This is the last question. I didn't get to this one. What would one thing be? I don't know. Do you have a prepared answer?
I do not, but
I think the one thing would be to think about how to bring it all together in a way that works for everyone. Right? There's so many different stakeholders here, right? And ultimately, it has to work for everyone. Mm-hmm. But we have a long history, especially in the linear field, but also on the digital side of, because you see it with the walled gardens, of sort of not necessarily being as partnering and more sort of forcing everybody my way or the highway. And I think coming to the table with more partnership to figure it all out consistently across the board, it's a hard ask, but that would be the thing for me.
yeah, I would say kind of focus navigation, because continue to do what you're doing that you know works for you. Lean into that, right? But what probably got you, or where your brand currently is, what got you there today is not gonna be what is gonna get you there over the next year, 2 years. So, focus, lean in on what is working for you, but never stop testing, learning, and seeing how you're going to navigate the new marketplace. So, yeah, just always have a testing mentality and kind of be open to what is gonna get your brand there in the next 2 years.
I agree. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I think puts this group in the best position, because continuing to test and learn has been on the forte for forever. So as brands come across and get more involved in performance marketing, you guys are there to help. So that said, questions from the audience? We do have a mic out there somewhere. I believe Jessica's going to pick it up.
Thank you.
Love to hear questions from anyone out there. Anyone? You guys just did the best 40
We
minutes
were
in the
so
entire
good.
show.
Yeah.
One? All right. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Alesha. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thanks,
We
everybody.
appreciate you being here.